Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're taking you on a bit of a global journey. We're looking into unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs, but way beyond the usual U.S.-focused stuff.
Right. Expanding the map.
Exactly. We're zoning in on some really significant events that have unfolded across South America, Africa, Russia, and, other international spots.
A truly worldwide phenomenon.
Our mission, basically, is to unpack what really happened in some of these encounters. What was the point? Or, what did people think the point was?
The perceived intent, yeah.
And, crucially, how did the governments in those places officially react? Because sometimes the reactions are almost as weird as the events themselves. We've got a whole stack of sources, declassified reports, witness accounts, expert analyses to kind of give you the shortcut to getting informed on the global picture here.
And it's so important to do that because these UAP reports, they aren't just an American thing or a Western thing. They pop up everywhere, every continent. They're this persistent part of, modern human experience. And sure, look, a lot of reports turn out to be something ordinary. Misidentifications, weather phenomena, that sort of thing.
Of course.
But in some cases, they present evidence that's frankly formidable. Stuff that really challenges a simple dismissal. And that often creates this huge, frustrating gap, between what people swear they saw, what the official story says happened.
That gap is exactly what we want to explore. Okay, so let's dive in. Where are we starting this adventure?
Let's head to Brazil. It's got a really rich and sometimes quite intense history with this phenomenon. We should probably start with the Kohler's flap. Back in 1977,
Magic Kohler's flap. Okay, sounds intriguing. What made it so chilling, as our sources put it?
Well, this wasn't just a few lights. It was prolonged. We're talking hundreds of civilians on Kohler's Island reporting all sorts of objects, different shapes. And they weren't just passive. They emitted these bright lights, beams. The locals even had a name for them. Chupa chupa?
Chupa chupa, meaning to suck.
Exactly. Because these beams weren't harmless. People reported burns, puncture wounds, some even alleged blood extraction.
Whoa, okay, that's pretty terrifying. Our sources mentioned Dr. Weleed Sissom Carvalho. She was head of the local hospital.
Yes, she observed these conical, cylindrical objects moving erratically, silently.
And it wasn't just locals. A commercial pilot saw things, right? Ubiriton Pinion Frias noted a light changing his shirt color.
That's right. And fishermen saw lights going into the water. So multiple types of witnesses, multiple environments.
It really paints a picture of something pervasive and, aggressive.
Very much so. The perception on the ground, and even among some analysts later, was that these were like beings on a mission.
Arresting defenses, maybe? Or technology?
That's one theory floated, yeah. It definitely felt like more than just a random sighting. It felt directed.
So how did the Brazilian government handle this invasion, almost?
Well, they took it very seriously at first. The Brazilian Air Force launched Operação Preto Operation Plate.
Operation Plate, okay.
It was a major investigation, multi-month, lots of resources, military investigators gathering photos, film, testimony.
So they must have concluded something significant happened.
You'd think so. But the official conclusion, publicly, no unusual phenomena.
Wait, what? After all that, photos, films, injuries, how?
Our sources are pretty clear on this. It was labeled a policy decision, not a scientific one. The thinking was, apparently, that the actual evidence was just too disturbing for public release.
A cover-up, essentially.
It certainly looks that way. And there's a tragic postscript. The commander of Operation Plate, Captain Uranje Hollanda, he gave an interview years later, revealing details. Weeks after that interview, he reportedly died by apparent suicide.
Wow, that has a whole other layer of gravity to it.
It does. And it's worth remembering, Brazil wasn't totally new to this. They'd actually set up an official body, SIONA, the Unidentified Aerial Object Investigation System, way back in '69. So there was institutional interest.
Okay, so from the intense, almost hostile encounters of Kohler's, let's jump forward a bit. 1996, the Varginha Incident. This one sounds different. A crash. Beings captured.
Yeah, Varginha is a whole different flavor. The core story involves a crashed craft, described often as cigar-shaped, and the alleged capture by military and police of these small, brown, oily-skinned beings with large red eyes.
Beings, okay. And consequences for those involved.
Reports mention witnesses being quarantined. There's even a story of a police officer who supposedly had contact with a being and died shortly after from an unknown infection.
That's serious. Is there much evidence backing this up?
Well, what's interesting is the media coverage from '96. It's still accessible. You can find news reports, interviews, And multiple separate testimonies mention a persistent, strange ammonia-like smell in the areas where things supposedly happened.
Physical traces, or at least sensory ones. What about the intent here? If Colares felt like a mission, what did Varginha feel like?
The evidence, as described, leans towards an accident. The craft seemed to be in distress. The beings, when supposedly seen, appeared wobbly, unsteady, and frightened.
Like crash survivors.
Exactly. So the activity, the military presence, it seemed more like a retrieval and recovery operation.
Yeah.
Trying to manage a situation that had gone wrong for the visitors, maybe.
So how did the authorities explain this one? Can't exactly call captured beings a weather balloon.
No. The official line became quite specific. They stated that the aliens seen at a hospital, a key part of the story, were actually just an expectant local couple who happened to have dwarfism.
Okay. It's quite an explanation. Did people buy it?
Well, skeptics like Brian Dunning pointed to sensationalism in the media, but locally. Many witnesses claim they faced military intimidation, warnings to keep quiet.
Right.
And the belief is still strong there. The city of Varginha actually built a spacecraft-shaped water tower. It's kind of a monument to the incident, in a way.
A water tower. That tells you something about the local impact, doesn't it? Okay, let's shift continents now. From South America to Africa. Zimbabwe, I believe.
That's right. A really profound event, potentially. The aerial school sighting. Ruwa, Zimbabwe, 1994.
Aerial school. This one involved children, right? A lot of them.
Yes, 62 school children, ages about 6 to 12. During their morning break, out in the playground.
What did they see?
They described one or more silvery, disc-shaped craft landing or hovering very low near the edge of the playground. And beings.
Beings again. What were these ones like?
Small, maybe a meter tall, dressed in tight black suits, big dark eyes. And they moved strangely, sort of bouncing almost unnaturally.
Okay, kids seeing strange things. But wasn't there something more to this one? Something about a message?
Yes, and that's what makes Ariel arguably unique. The older children especially reported receiving a powerful message. Not spoken, but telepathically.
Telepathically. What was the message?
It was described as an urgent environmental warning. Basically, that humanity was damaging the planet. Pollution, misusing technology. That we needed to change course.
Wow, that's quite specific. And from beings next to a playground, how did the kids react?
They were terrified, deeply frightened by the whole experience. But the message itself seemed clear. A warning for humanity.
So a major event, potentially profound message. What was the official response in Zimbabwe?
There wasn't one. No official investigation whatsoever.
Really? Nothing?
Nothing. Skeptics suggested things like mass hysteria, maybe the kids influenced each other. Some tried to link it to a Russian rocket re-entry seen days before, suggesting that maybe set the stage.
But what about the consistency? Did anyone credible look into it?
Yes, the late Harvard psychiatrist Dr. John Mack. He interviewed the children very soon after the event, then again later. He found their accounts remarkably consistent, detailed, and concluded they were telling the truth as they experienced it.
But he faced pushback for that, didn't he?
Ooh, significant professional backlash. Studying UAP experiencers seriously was, and sometimes still is, damaging to an academic career.
A familiar story, unfortunately. Okay, let's move north now to Europe. The UK, RendleshamForest. This one's famous, especially in military circles.
Absolutely. RendleshamForest, Suffolk, 1980, near twin NATO bases RAF Woodbridge and RAF Bentwaters. Key elements here. Multiple nights, multiple military witnesses, including high-ranking ones.
Right. It wasn't just a fleeting glimpse. Tell us about the first night, December 26th.
USAF security patrolmen saw strange lights descending into the forest near the base. They went to investigate. They encountered weird effects, radio malfunctions, static electricity in the air, and then they saw it. A glowing, triangular-shaped object, seemingly resting on 3 legs on the forest floor.
Triangular, not the usual saucer. Did they get close?
One of them, Sergeant Jim Peniston, reportedly got close enough to touch it. Described the surface as smooth, opaque, like black glass. Warm. He even sketched symbols he saw in its hull, hieroglyphic-like.
Symbols, wow, okay. And physical evidence.
The next morning, investigators found 3 triangular depressions in the ground where the object was seen. Broken branches on trees above, scorch marks on the sides of trees facing the landing spot, and radiation readings.
Radiation?
Elevated radiation levels were recorded in the landing area. But then, it happened again, didn't it, 2 nights later?
Yes. This time, the deputy base commander himself, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, led a patrol out.
Right, and Halt documented everything in real time on a microcassette recorder. You can actually listen to the tape.
What did Halt and his team see?
They reconfirmed the radiation levels at the initial landing site. Then they witnessed strange lights moving through the trees, described as pulsing, red, sun-like lights. They seemed to dart around, maneuvering in ways conventional aircraft couldn't. And then, perhaps the most alarming part, one object reportedly hovered and directed a beam of light down into the base, specifically towards the weapons storage area, the WSA.
The nuclear weapons storage area.
That's the implication, yes.
Yeah.
A highly sensitive, critical area.
So what's the perceived intent here? Touching the craft, symbols, beams into a nuclear storage.
It feels very deliberate. Repeated intrusions into military airspace, a seeming indifference to the observers on the ground, and that beam into the WSA. It strongly suggests surveillance, reconnaissance, maybe even something more, probing.
Targeted intelligence gathering, perhaps, on a major NATO base during the Cold War. So what was the official British explanation for this incredibly detailed military encounter?
The Ministry of Defense, the MOD, officially concluded it was a misidentification of a nearby lighthouse, meteors, and bright stars.
A lighthouse. For the object on the ground. And the radiation. The symbols.
Doesn't quite add up for many, no. Lord Hill Norton, a former chief of defense staff, called the official explanation untenable.
Strong words from a top official. Was there internal disagreement, too?
Definitely. The base commander at the time, Colonel Ted Conrad, later dismissed Halt's account, even suggested it was a hoax, accusing Halt of being ashamed and embarrassed. It got quite contentious.
And the files.
Key mod files on Rendlesham are classified until 2085, which, only fuels suspicion.
Yeah, that doesn't exactly scream transparency. Any other theories?
There's a less exotic one. A prank by disgruntled British special forces using flares and a stolen balloon. But it doesn't fully explain all the details, like the radiation or the specific symbols Peniston reported.
Okay, one more stop in Europe. Belgium. A whole wave of sightings.
Yes, the Belgian UFO wave, 1989-1990. This was huge. Thousands of witnesses across the country reporting large, silent, triangular craft.
Triangles again. Like Rendlesham. Was there official confirmation?
Absolutely. These things were tracked on military radar. On one occasion, 2 Belgian Air Force F-16s were scrambled to intercept. They got radar locked.
And what happened?
The object just took off. It accelerated from about 115 mph to over 1,100 mph almost instantly, and it dropped altitude from 9,000 feet to 5,000 feet in seconds, then down to treetop level, then shot back up. Maneuvers considered impossible for known aircraft.
So the military confirmed they couldn't explain it.
Pretty much. Major General Wilfried de Brouwer, the Air Staff Chief of Operations, stated publicly they, quote, could not identify the nature, origin, and intentions of the reported phenomena.
Right.
A very candid admission.
Right. Okay, triangles over Belgium. Now let's shift focus again to Russia, or the former Soviet Union. How did things play out there?
Russia has some fascinating cases with unique official responses sometimes. Let's start with the Dalyagorsk incident, also called the Height 611 incident from 1986, an alleged crash.
Another crash. What happened?
Hundreds of people in the town of Dalyagorsk saw this reddish sphere flying towards a hill, Height 611. It seemed to wobble, then crashed into the hillside.
And did investigators find anything? Like Varginha?
Yes, but perhaps even stranger. They recovered debris, metallic fragments, some described as little spheres or droplets, alloys with really unusual compositions, elements mixed in ways that seemed artificial, not natural, and this bizarre mesh material containing incredibly fine threads, some apparently made of gold, only 17 microns thick. Scientists who examined it called it intricate technology beyond the present capabilities of terrestrial science.
Wow, so advanced materials found at a crash site? What was the perceived intent here? Just an accident?
The evidence points that way, yes. It was seen to crash, not land deliberately. The nature of the debris complex alloys, fine mesh, suggests maybe a sophisticated probe.
Like for scientific study or reconnaissance?
Possibly. Something advanced that suffered a critical failure.
And the official Soviet explanation?
They offered possibilities. An unsuccessful rocket launch, maybe ball lightning or a plasmoid, but no single definitive conclusion was reached publicly. Interestingly, though, one later Russian analysis reportedly confirmed that the debris signaled otherworldly origins.
So internal acknowledgement, perhaps. Okay, from a remote crash to something much more public. Voronezh, 1989. This one made headlines, didn't it?
Oh, big time. This supposedly happened in broad daylight in a city park.
What was the story?
Primarily children witnesses again.
Right.
They reported seeing a pink glow then a large, deep red ball or sphere, maybe 3 meters across, landing in the park.
Landing, not crashing.
Correct. And from the sphere, they claimed, emerged a very tall figure, maybe 3 meters tall, with 3 eyes, wearing a silvery jumpsuit, accompanied by a smaller robot-like figure.
3 eyes. Okay. And did they do anything?
This is where it gets really strange. The tall being allegedly used some kind of tube or ray gun to make a 16-year-old boy nearby disappear temporarily.
Disappear?
Vanish, then reappear moments later after the craft and beings left. And adding to the weirdness, a local police lieutenant, Sergei Matveyev, claimed he saw the object land and later saw a body flying in the sky.
A body flying. Okay, this is definitely one of the stranger ones. What possible intent could there be here? Landing in a park, a 3-eyed alien, a robot making a kid vanish.
It's deeply ambiguous, isn't it? It was overt, no attempt at hiding, but no clear communication, and aside from the temporary vanishing act, no overt hostility.
So maybe just sightseeing, a low-threat display of presence.
Could be interpreted that way. It's baffling.
And how did the Soviet government, which wasn't exactly known for transparency, handle this public spectacle?
This is where it gets politically interesting. TASS, the official Soviet news agency, initially reported the incident as fact.
TSS reported aliens landing. Seriously?
Yes. They cited scientists who supposedly confirmed the landing site, found depressions, even unidentified rocks. Those were later dismissed as just iron oxide, basically rust.
Why would they do that?
It was during Gorbachev's era of glasnost openness. Some analysts think the government actually saw utility in publicizing these kinds of claims, maybe to distract, maybe to signal a new era. State media ran with it for a bit.
But did it last?
Not really. A Soviet evening news crew went to investigate and could only find the children as direct witnesses to the beings. So skepticism crept back in, suggestions of creative imagination. It swung from sensationalism back towards control.
Fascinating use of the phenomenon itself. Okay, we should probably touch on a couple of other significant non-U.S. cases briefly. Australia.
Right, the Westall sighting. Melbourne, 1966. Another school sighting, but this time over 200 witnesses, including students and teachers.
What did they see?
A gray or silvery saucer-shaped object maneuvering silently near the school. It reportedly descended rapidly into a nearby field called the Grange, leaving a large circular flattened area in the grass. Some also reported seeing conventional aircraft, possibly military, pursuing it.
200 witnesses, teachers included. Surely that was investigated.
The response was allegedly the opposite, described as swift and suppressive. Witnesses reported being interrogated, warned by military or police figures not to talk. The headmaster apparently threatened students and teachers with punishment if they spoke about it.
So silence it.
Seems like it. Officially, the government claims no records of the event exist. The explanation given at the time, and sometimes repeated since, was a misidentified experimental military aircraft, or more commonly, a weather balloon.
A weather balloon being chased by other aircraft and leaving ground traces.
Witnesses adamantly refute that.
I bet. Okay. And Canada. Shag Harbor.
Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia, 1967. Multiple, independent groups of witnesses saw a large object with a sequence of flashing lights fly over the area and then appear to crash, or at least ditch, into the waters of the harbor.
A crash into water? Was anything found?
A multi-agency search was launched. RCMP, Navy divers, Coast Guard. They found nothing. No wreckage, no bodies, no debris, and all conventional aircraft in the region were accounted for. Just reports of a strange yellow foam on the water surface.
Interesting that you mentioned Canada, though, because their stance seems to have evolved recently.
Yes, that's quite significant. Unlike the historical suppression in Australia or the UK's dismissal, Canada's approach has shifted. The recent Sky Canada project, a government-backed report, explicitly acknowledges unexplained sightings in Canadian airspace.
Acknowledges them.
Yes, and it calls for a formal, coordinated federal framework to actually study the phenomena involving transport, defense, and scientific agencies. It suggests a real move towards greater transparency and structured investigation.
That's a big difference from it was a lighthouse or no records exist.
It absolutely is. It reflects a growing willingness, at least in some quarters, to engage with the data seriously.
Okay, so we've toured the globe: Brazil, Zimbabwe, UK, Belgium, Russia, Australia, Canada. What patterns emerge when you connect these dots? What are the common threads in the phenomena itself?
Well, several things stand out quite clearly across these diverse cases. First, morphology, the shapes.
Right. We heard discs and saucers like Westall and Coleras.
Exactly. We heard triangles, like Rendlesham and the Belgian wave.
And spheres or orbs like Delnogorsk and Vornas.
So, recurring shapes reported independently across decades and continents. That's significant. Then there's the kinematics, how they move.
The impossible maneuvers.
Precisely. Silent operation is almost universal in close encounters. The ability to hover motionless, then accelerate instantaneously to extreme speeds, making sharp angular turns that would, well, liquefy a human pilot due to g-forces.
Physics-defying movement.
By our current understanding of physics and aerodynamics, yes. It consistently suggests technology far beyond our own, or perhaps operating on different principles entirely.
And the electromagnetic effects. The EM interference.
That's another recurring theme, especially in military encounters. Disruption of radar, radios, even weapon systems, as implied at Rendlesham, or reported in other cases not detailed today, like the Tehran 1976 incident. It suggests an interaction with our technology.
Okay, so consistency in the phenomena. But what about the consistency or lack thereof in how governments react? You touched on this, but let's break down that spectrum.
It really is a spectrum. You have what we could call active investigation, but often followed by public dismissal. Think Brazil's Operation Plate, or perhaps Canada's earlier efforts before the recent shift. They investigate seriously, gather data, but the public face is often dismissive or the results are classified.
Right. Keep it under wraps.
Then you have outright dismissal and ridicule. The historical UK and Australian responses fit here, offering explanations like lighthouses or weather balloons that seem totally inadequate given the witness testimony, especially from trained military observers.
Almost insulting their intelligence.
Some witnesses certainly felt that way. Then there's that fascinating category of ambiguity and political utility, like the Soviet response to Voronezh. Using the phenomenon, swinging from reporting it as fact via state media to then backtracking to skepticism, seemingly based on political expediency.
Using the mystery itself.
Exactly. And finally, you do have instances, perhaps less common or less publicized, of direct reporting and intergovernmental communication, treating it initially as a potential security threat that needs immediate attention, as allegedly happened with the Tehran incident being reported quickly to the U.S.
So it's a real mixed bag of reactions globally. Which brings us back to that gap you mentioned at the start. This gap between detailed, often credible witness accounts and these varied, sometimes dismissive or contradictory official explanations. What does this gap mean?
Well, it strongly suggests that the official responses are often not driven purely by the evidence or a lack thereof. They seem heavily influenced by policy, by potential societal impact, by national security concerns, real or perceived.
Calculations, not just conclusions.
Exactly. Political calculations, risk assessments about releasing potentially disruptive information. The explanations often feel like narrative management, rather than a straightforward assessment of the data, especially when that data comes from their own military pilots or radar systems.
So wrapping this up, our deep dive shows this global UAP pattern, remarkably consistent physical characteristics, physics-defying maneuvers, set against this backdrop of inconsistent, often contradictory, official human responses.
That sums it up well. And while, again, we have to stress that many sightings do have conventional explanations, the core incidents we've looked at, Coleras, Varginha, Aerial, Rendlesham, Delnogorsk, and others, they represent this solid body of evidence that really resists easy answers.
It's global, it seems technologically sophisticated, and it's persistent.
Undeniably.
Yeah.
And the way different governments have handled it tells us a lot about secrecy, transparency, and maybe even fear of the unknown or fear of losing control of the narrative. It challenges our scientific assumptions, and it definitely challenges governmental openness.
So, the final thought for you, our listener. Given this consistency in the phenomenon across cultures and time, and the often bizarre or inadequate official responses, what might we collectively be missing by letting this mystery just drift? And maybe more profoundly, what does our varied reaction to these unknowns truly say about us, about humanity's readiness to confront something fundamentally new or unexpected in the cosmos?